The Trump administration continues its efforts to slash the federal workforce, this time with a focus on the Department of Education. It comes as Elon Musk met with Republican lawmakers last night about DOGE. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander brings us the latest.
This morning, the president reportedly taking aim at a department that affects schools across the country. The Wall Street Journal, citing people briefed on the matter, reports President Trump's expected to issue an executive order as early as today aimed at abolishing the Department of Education.
I'm saying, what do these people do? What do they do?
NBC News has not independently confirmed the report. The president cannot abolish an entire department without the approval of Congress, but the administration may look for ways to defund programs instead, according to the Washington Post. President Trump has said his aim is cutting down inefficiency and waste. The impact on American school children could be far-reaching. The Department of Education says it serves more than 50 million students across the country. Democrats and labor unions have argued dismantling the department would be devastating.
Class sizes are going to balloon. We know that one-on-one attention that that students need will not be there, and it will affect our most vulnerable students, those who are living in poverty, those who have disabilities.
Meanwhile, the president's top lieutenant, Elon Musk, who heads the Department of Government Efficiency, huddling privately with congressional Republicans.
There's a lot of opportunity to improve expenditures in the government.
Several senators telling NBC News they discussed the possibility of a package to make DOGE's sweeping cuts permanent, an option that came as a surprise to Musk, who pumped his fist and danced around the room, according to Lindsey Graham.
He was so happy.
Among the federal firings to come, Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins announcing his department is aiming to slash 15% of its workforce, as many as 80,000 employees.
Now, we regret anyone who loses their job, but we'll be making major changes, so get used to it.
Democrats are warning veterans will be the ones who suffer.
This staffing cut is a betrayal of our promise to our service members. It is outrageous.
That was NBC's Peter Alexander with that report. Elise Jordan is back with us now, and join the conversation we have MSNBC host Symone Sanders Townsend, NBC News national affairs analyst and a partner and chief political columnist at Puck, John Heilman, and opinion columnist for the New York Times, M. Gesson. Thank you all for being here this morning. Symone, let's start with you. To reaction to Peter's package, more sweeping cuts. Musk yesterday, taking some heat from quiet heat, but from Republicans. We hear reports that a memo that's gone around the Department of Veteran Affairs, 80,000 jobs throughout the country could be lost. And today, perhaps as soon as today, the Department of Education tossed aside.
What is so interesting about the VA jobs, we are talking about people that answer the crisis hotline for our veterans when they are calling. We're talking about nurses. My mother-in-law was a nurse at the VA for more than 30 years. In Maryland, and we're talking about nurses at the VA in Pittsburgh. This goes directly to the heart of the belief, frankly, from folks that work for the president, that the government is just not necessary. And that's a direct contrast to what the previous administrations, plural, I would say, have believed, is that the government should work for people. There's always differentiating just tax, if you will, that people take. But this Trump 2.0 doesn't believe that the government should work for anybody. They want to break it. So to all those Republican strategists out there that I talked to before the election that said, some policy paper about abolishing the Department of Education. Do you guys really going to believe some effing policy paper? Well, the policy paper has made its way into the policy of the government. And now we are seeing the ramifications of this election. They have consequences.
They certainly do. And John Heilman, this wasn't explicitly what Trump ran on this past year. I mean, certainly he wants to get to deep state, all that. But 80,000 cuts in the Department of Veteran Affairs. I mean, that's something, to Symone's point, that's going to affect everybody, Republican, Democrats alike. We heard from a Fox News host last week or so pleading with Trump and Musk to reconsider some of the cuts because his friend, a veteran, was going to be impacted. This is only going to increase that tenfold. It seems like it's pretty dangerous politics, no?
Yeah, really dangerous politics, Jonathan. And I would say, Symone is 100% right when she talks about the difference between past administrations and this one, we have had a lively and robust debate between Republicans and Democrats, particularly in our lifetime, over the proper size and scale of the federal government post New Deal, post Great Society. And the notion of eliminating the Department of Education, whether you like that policy or not, has been part of Republican ideology, has been something that many Republicans have proposed over the course of the last 20, 30 years. It is a totally different scale and a totally different kind of political, introduce a level of totally different political volatility when you start talking about the VA, which is a thing about which very few Republicans and no Democrats have ever wanted around for making arguments for cutting the Veterans Affairs Administration, not just because the service in the military is revered in the country, rightly, but also because so much of the VA workforce has to do with veterans' health. And if there's anything that we're committed to in America nationally on a bipartisan basis, is taking care of the health of the people who've served the country's military. So I think it's maybe one of the most politically dangerous things that the administration is undertaking. I'm not sure if they understand the level of backlash that you could see in Republican districts throughout the country if those kind of cuts go through to the VA.
Yeah, we've seen anger already at town halls prior to these cuts. And John is right. The previous administrations, including Trump the first time around, tried to expand help for veterans, taking a markedly different tack this time around. And we haven't even mentioned tariffs. We'll get to that with Andrew Ross Sorkin in just a few minutes. But at the moment now, let's turn to overseas, where French President Emmanuel Macron is urging Europe to be ready to defend Ukraine without U.S. support under this version of the Trump administration. In a primetime address, Macron warned that if Ukraine is abandoned, Russia will not stop there, threatening France and the rest of Europe. Macron called for more arms and equipment to deter future attacks, adding that to remain a spectator in this dangerous world would be crazy. Meanwhile, earlier this morning in Brussels, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who announced an ambitious plan to strengthen both Ukraine and the rest of Europe.
We want a peace through strength. And this is the reason why I present today to the leaders the Rearm Europe plan. The Rearm Europe plan provides up to 800 billion euros for defense investment. It gives the member states fiscal space to invest in defense. It gives the member states possibility to invest in the Ukrainian defense industry or to procure military capabilities that go right away to Ukraine.
You made a strong signal to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian warriors, to civilians, to all our families, and it's great that we are not alone. We feel it and we know it. Thank you so much for everything.
Your latest column for the New York Times has this headline: Putin is ready to carve up the world. Trump just handed him the knife. It reads in part this: what happens to Ukraine now? Before Zelensky's visit to Washington, the best case scenario was for Russia to agree to a ceasefire in exchange for the roughly 20% of Ukrainian territory that it currently occupies. That would leave millions of Ukrainian citizens, those who live in the occupied territories and those who have been displaced east, under the rule of Russian totalitarianism. Now, that outcome, which was never likely to begin with, appears all but impossible. We are now in the realm of the worst-case scenario, in which it is possible to imagine Putin launching a renewed offensive against Ukraine aimed at total domination, this time with the active assistance of the United States. Putin doesn't just want to return to the 20th century. He already resides there. And that is where anyone looking for what could happen next should turn. And let's get you to expand upon this. Obviously, what we saw in the Oval Office last Friday, destabilizing for so many, particularly Ukrainians. And it does feel like there's been a fundamental shift in this White House's approach to the war, where, as some have said, it seems like we're on the Kremlin side.
It seems very clear that Trump is on the Kremlin side. And what that means is, I mean, it's terrifying to contemplate. Putin has made it very clear that the reason he attacked Ukraine was that he wants to reclaim Russia's role in the world, and particularly Russia's role in Europe. Russia's role in Europe before the end of the Cold War was that it dominated half the continent. That's really what he wants. And of course, there's no guarantee that he would stop there. Of course, the reason that European leaders are stepping up now after last Friday's disastrous meeting at the White House is that they know they're under direct threat. That is what French President Macron said to his people last night in his televised address. Russia has already responded by threatening Macron back. This is escalation of the kind that we haven't seen in our lifetimes, and really the only thing we can compare it to is the middle of the 20th century.
Well, and I wanted to talk to you about that because in your piece you build out the analogy that this is equivalent to Neville Chamberlain, and when he appeased Germany back in the day. Do you really think that that is the historical flashpoint that we're at? Is it that dire? And what is kind of a happy middle ground that could be met where Trump clearly is not going to go on with full throttled support? But what would be the best case scenario for the Ukrainians at this point?
You know, I don't want to fantasize about the best case scenario for Ukrainians who...
Realistic best case scenario.
Right. So realistic best case scenario at this point is not on the table. Where the realistic best case scenario was ceding to Putin 20% of Ukrainian territory. Already a disastrous outcome for millions of Ukrainians. But something that I think Ukrainians could accept because they want an end to the war more than anyone wants an end to the war. But leaving them with no defenses, leaving them in a place where Putin basically would have time to regroup, and that's still the best case scenario. Right? The worst case scenario is that he escalates right now, and that the United States starts helping him in some way.
So let's take this beyond the borders of Ukraine. Obviously, French President Macron alarmed and warning that Russia could streak further. But whether Russia actually goes on the aggression against these other European nations, talk to us how you see the changing relationship between the U.S. and Europe, our longtime allies, who now is under great strain, both militarily and economically. Is this going to be, do you see the continent sort of reshifting its own focus to become a lot less reliant on us?
Well, that's what Macron said last night, and that's what European leaders have been saying because they see what's happening. It's very hard to predict what's going to happen. We are in completely uncharted waters as far as the European continent is concerned. It has had the United States as a guarantor of its security since the end of World War II. That period is over. What happens now is something that we've never seen before.
All right, the new piece, the must-read, online now for the New York Times. Opinion columnist for the Times, M. Gessen. M, thank you so much.
Thank you.